I wish for happiness. I seek happiness. To find happiness with you, to be your happiness. Take me to a true elsewhere. Please take me. A bird in a cage, a bird without wings, a bird without a voice, a lonely bird. So take me. I wish for happiness. I'm happy just to be with you, happy just to see you smile. So take me to a true elsewhere. Take me away. I seek happiness. My first thought is of you, my last thought is of you. A promised land where fairies wait, with room just enough for two. So take me there. I want to forget reality, to be in my dreams with you, where I can be thinking of you forever. Take me to happiness. Clover is, in many ways, very difficult to talk about. For one thing, it's unfinished, which makes it one of the times the highly exaggerated "Clamp never finishes anything" meme actually applies. But there's more to it than simply that. The art makes heavy use of negative space, both white and black variety. Peppered throughout is a deliberately obfuscative tone via the song's lyrics, like the ones I spoke earlier, as well as a decided lack of fun that comes with Clamp's other, more well-known work. There is no cutesiness like in Cardcaptor Sakura, nor the over-the-top reactions like Kimihiro Watanuki in Holic. There is very little action compared to X, and the sense of fantasy is tinged with more cyberpunk compared to Rigaveda or Magic Knight Rayearth. Compared to most manga that one would pick up and read at a shop somewhere, it is not as easy to grasp because, much like Nihei Tsutomu's Blame or Abara, it sometimes seems like we're only being given the snippets of information rather than the grander picture, even by the time we reach the non-ending. It's therefore easy to dismiss this as a rather confused story that gets high off its own sensibility, but I would respectfully submit that it might not just be among Clamp's best work in general, but a serious contender for their actual best work. I know that this is an unpopular opinion since there are several other, perhaps more well-known and critically regarded manga which are usually considered their finest hours, and God knows how much I adore Holic. But let me at least try to explain why this story works, however briefly, and trying to avoid spoilers as best I can. This is admittedly a generality, but in fiction that leans more heavily into cyberpunk, either directly or indirectly, just about every main protagonist character is imprisoned for some reason, either because of circumstances that happen to them, or by the very foundations of their births. The cybernetic or futuristic world that surrounds them is so monolithically large, both in structure and in menace, that one cannot help but feel like little more than a cog in a relentless, uncaring, unconcerned machine. Humanity is a scarce but precious commodity in circumstances like these, which is why one of the main concerns of these types of stories is how characters ultimately respond to these kinds of oppressively tangible environments, and how some sense of inner peace is supposed to be attained by living there, or in trying to escape it at all, success or failure. They bang on the bars that imprison their bodies and their hearts, desperate for an exit, hoping that a single sound wave of the echo reaches someone or something to help them. Just to isolate two specific examples, we experienced this firsthand recently with Imaishi Hiroyuki's Cyberpunk Edgerunners, in which nearly everything in David's life rained down woe and tragedy that ultimately culminated in his life of crime, even if for a supposedly humanist ending. An older cyberpunk anime, Akira, seized the anger and resentment of young people in a post-catastrophe reality where the cycles of death and rebirth continue in unceasing motion. As humanity scraps both individually and collectively scream and struggle for power of some kind, any kind, it culminates in its cosmic potential that breaks the boundaries of reality and space-time, ushering in a new future for those who are caught in the middle. Constantly woven throughout Clover is imprisonment, whether literally or figuratively. In Clover, Kazuhiko is not imprisoned in the literal sense by the universe around him. Rather, as he is roped into carrying out one more job, he still lives within the dark shadows of his lover's death. It is obvious that the aftershock still resonates deeply within him. He is well regarded among those who know of his capabilities, and has even been granted favors when things have gotten messy in the past, but others knowing what he's capable of and trusting him to carry out missions doesn't matter to him. For Kazuhiko, what happened is anything but fair, and a piece of him always feels kept at a distance, making his introduction a strange combination of alienating and fascinating. Constantly haunted by his love for his dead wife, this state of being more or less defines his existence, as though he's a walking phantom that can certainly still feel, but as though there is less substance for his feelings to actually grasp onto. Thus, they cannot hold their form and dissolve in simple wind, leaving him emotionally entombed within his own memories and feelings that those memories elicit, unable to allow him to move on and continue with his life. Although for Kazuhiko, there's a question of what exactly continuing on with his life would even mean at all. As he gets assigned his new job, he meets Sue, one of the Clovers. The Clovers, mysterious children who can magically control technology, are kept locked away from the world to be studied and to not disrupt the power of the wizards. She and her powers are trapped in a seeming literal and metaphorical birdcage with no hope for seeing the outside world or being able to live within it proper. She aspires to go beyond, but physically can't. In both mind and body, there is no real agency for either of these two, or for most of the extended cast. Everyone is, in some way, damned in unfairness. The sense of unfairness and lack of agency ultimately links to this notion that I spoke about earlier concerning receiving only snippets of information rather than the fuller picture. Things often happen to the characters in Clover that they either can't anticipate, or perhaps can anticipate, but cannot quite work around so cleanly. As such, everyone, including the reader, is left to their own situational barrenness, forced to look into the dark mirror of what they're feeling and trying to make some sense of how what they're doing fits into the scheme of how they see and understand their own lives. Kazuhiko has to act as a guardian for Sue as he escorts her to Faerie Park, and as time goes on, they both begin to confide in one another the sheer heartbreak that they both have. Kazuhiko speaks of his wife, Sue speaks of her imprisonment, and as their journey continues into the later pages, we realize just how solitary her existence up until this point has been. Constantly hunted and chased after once Kazuhiko starts to take her away, she can never know peace as long as she exists outside her cage. It might even be more accurate to say that she can never know peace as long as she exists at all. And like any imprisonment story, the wish is escape. As the song's lyrics say, "Take me to a true elsewhere." Yet no matter how much the characters struggle to fulfill their wishes, and even if they succeed in doing so, Clover thwarts any real sense of catharsis not because it is unfinished, though that is indeed partially responsible, but because the resolutions that exist come at such a heavy price that the aftermath feels like a cross between Sisyphean futility and what was the point? If they escaped their literal or metaphorical prisons, what does it matter if they don't even necessarily get to see the long-lasting fruits of their efforts? There is so little levity in Clover that it can, as a reader, feel unfun and cold, as cruelly unfair to us as it is to do cruelly unfair things to its characters. But it is within that very unfairness that the characters realize the depths of their warmer feelings and the actual potentiality of what those feelings could bring. That the wishes they sought were not just requests to do something or take me away, but instead allowed them to glimpse something far more beautiful than any Faerie Park or singular song lyric. Even if for just a fleeting moment, they could gaze at both a new world and a new self, beyond the realms of whatever destiny had awaited them. Not every destiny can be avoided, but that does not mean that the experience of moving toward that destiny cannot be filled with moments of the universe unveiling itself to show what is possible. Just as Kazuhiko cannot let go of his wife at the start of the manga, he likewise cannot let go of Sue for what she has given him, the chance to experience what it is like even to exist again. Just as Sue cannot let go of the burden of being a Clover, she cannot let go of Kazuhiko for what he has given her, the chance to witness the world beyond the walls she knew. And as the universe of the story gradually begins to unfurl and we become introduced to the others involved in Sue and Kazuhiko's stories, we begin to see how imprisoned they are as well, caught within the snares of circumstance and wondering with mournful, longing souls for their own desires and wishes to be fulfilled. To these characters, succeeding or failing in fulfilling their own wishes and the wishes of others is essentially their declaration to themselves and to the people who were with them. We lived, we loved, and though we may have lost much, we were here, no matter how briefly. Whether you want to define here as being an actual physical location, having lived on the earth, or being remembered long after you are gone in the metaphysical twilight, it doesn't matter. The simple fact remains, which reader and character understand alike. You existed, and you were here. You, the viewer, you are here now. You exist. Even if you cannot change what has happened to you, or you can't change your feelings or destiny in the immediate moment, it is because you exist at all that you have the capability and capacity to move beyond the walls of whatever imprisons you at the present time. Whether those prisons are trivial things or the larger barriers in our lives that we have yet to conquer, the fact that you exist means that it is never too late. That we have the capacity and capability to wish. Even if we do not mean much in the grand scheme of the universe, within our own lives, one person, one encounter, and one wish can change our world. I won't presume to know about your life and what happened to you specifically, but as long as you are here, you can. For me, that is what Clover is truly all about, and why it's one of Clamp's best manga. In the midst of all of its melancholy, all its coldness, all its misery, it ultimately has a message and reminder worth clinging to. It's not the first piece of media to propose this idea, to be sure, but it's delivered in a manner that reads as sincere. We'll find Faerie Park one day. If there was to be any more exploration of Clover into something larger than what it is now, that never happened. This does not mean that there was no attempt to try and bring more attention to the material, though. In August 1999, a 6-minute anime with music using and inspired by the manga's song lyrics was created at Studio Madhouse, directed by Kosaka Kitaro, a longtime freelance animator for Studio Ghibli films. It depicts the events of the first 2 volumes with Shu and Kazuhiko journeying together to find Faerie Park. It's honestly one of my favorite animated shorts, just as strangely constructed as the original Clover manga, and propelled by Hashimoto Ichiko's voice that you may have heard throughout Razafon, and further enhanced by Honda Yasunori's sound direction, whose work you may recognize from properties such as Macross and Rintaro's adaptation of Clamp's X from 1996. Even though it does contain spoilers for the manga, they're directed in such an obtuse manner that it's more about conveying sensation rather than plot, so you can watch it with little worry about things getting ruined for you. Unfortunately, this little push was not enough to save the material from hiatus. The original manga that published the chapters serially, Amie, only lasted from 1997 to 1999, and Clover seemingly died out with it. According to Clamp's head writer Okawa Nanase in an interview for Karampo no Kiseki Volume 2, there would need to be at least 2 more published volumes to complete the rest of the story. But with it now being 25 years at the time of this recording since the manga's hiatus, and no press releases about possible continuation have come to light, it is likely that Clover will remain unfinished forever, much like Clamp's X. Though Kodansha would ultimately release a collector's edition of the manga in the 2020s, Clover characters would virtually vanish forever, except most notably for a brief little moment in the Clamp in Wonderland music video from October 2007. Especially considering the wide reach of the so-called Clampverse, finding various ways to link its many properties together, perhaps most notably in the crossing between Holic and Tsubasa Reservoir Chronicle, it's rather sad that Clover has been essentially discarded, and that's in part why it remains to this day one of Clamp's less widely read works in comparison to others. If you have never heard of Clover, or are a fan of Clamp works but have somehow not gotten to this one yet, or if there's anything that I've said in the course of this video that piques your curiosity, I highly encourage you to give Clover a read. It manages to oscillate between cold and warm, devastating and life-affirming, and empty and full, seemingly with no effort. It's a strange manga in many ways, but one where I found the experience of reading it to be such a joy that it cemented itself among my favorite manga. Most of the chapters are only a handful of pages long and can easily be read in the course of a couple of days. It's brief, but it's there, waiting to be loved, wishing to be loved. Perhaps that is the ultimate metatextual reading for this material. Clover is brief, but it was here, and I loved it. Thank you to Tobble and M Meaningless Name. A special thank you to my patron. And a thank you for watching. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, share, click that bell for notifications so you don't miss an upload, donate to my Patreon, or follow my social media accounts. Links provided in the video's description. In the meantime, this has been ZNote of ZNoteTaku. Happy viewing, everyone!